Monotype.
Welcome to Creative Characters from Monotype, the show where we meet the people working at the intersection of type in everyday life. I'm your host, Livia, and today I'm speaking with Jess Goldsmith. Jess is an award-winning illustrator and lettering artist based out of Brooklyn, New York. She's also the founder of Women of Type, which is an online global community that amplifies the work of women and non-binary typographers, lettering artists, graphic designers. This community was started on Instagram, which is exactly where I found out about her and Women of Type. Jess has also built a really impressive career as a freelancer for herself, and I wanted to know exactly how she got to where she is today. So I asked about her approach and what advice she would give to early career creatives trying to land clients. Here's what she had to say.
I think you have to be annoying. You have to just keep reminding people that you're there. And sometimes you'll email somebody and they won't answer. And it's not because they don't want to work. Maybe they don't want to work with you, but you don't know. You have to keep emailing them.
She then goes on to say that sometimes she'll eventually follow up with someone 4 times before they write back. But then a lot of the time she does end up working with that person. So it just goes to show that being persistent is key. Here to preview this episode with me is my co-host, Cadley. Hi, Cadley.
Hi, Livia. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you today?
Pretty good. Excited for this episode.
I am too. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. So what did you think of this thing that Jess said about not being afraid to be annoying when you're trying to court someone that you want to work with?
It's funny because I feel like with the podcast especially, I've actually experienced this a lot where I have to annoy people via email to get them to, agree to be on the podcast. And a lot of times it is the 4th or 5th email that I send where they're like, yes, I'm sorry, I was busy. I'll totally do it. So yeah, very relatable.
I think it's something that's super relatable to a lot of people. And she said there's this misconception that when we don't hear back from people right away, we initially kind of take that as immediate rejection, whereas the more likely case is that people are busy. They're filing it away in their brain for later, and maybe they just forget. So obviously you want to stop short of harassment when it comes to following up with people a lot, but a nudge or 2 wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, we're all dealing with a lot of messages, emails, Slacks, all the things, texts. So
yes.
So what else did you two talk about?
We also talked a lot about Women of Type, kind of its origins and how it came about in the first place. And she said this herself, but she built it out of spite, which I thought was really funny because she wishes that this, platform existed when she was first starting out as a self-taught designer. So very excited for you to listen more about Women of Type and, its history.
I can't wait to hear it. Well, thank you so much for hosting this week. And with that, I'll turn it over to you and Jess.
I'm Livia. I'm social media manager here at Monotype, and I'm very, very excited for today's episode. We have Jess Goldsmith, who is the founder of Women of Type. Women of Type is a global community that amplifies women and non-binary creatives in the typography and lettering industry all over the world. And we're super glad to have you on, Jess. Welcome to Creative Characters.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to be on the podcast, but also just anything involving Monotype is iconic.
I love it. I love to hear it. Jess, I'm loving all the artwork behind you in your background right now. Where are you tuning in from today?
I am tuning in from a little town called Brooklyn, New York. You might have heard of it. This is where I live, where myself, my husband, and my dogs live. I typically work out of my studio in Gowanus, but for recording days, I come here because there's just too much of an echo over there. But if you guys do hear some honking in the background, that's because I live on a pretty busy street. We're going to try to mark that out as much as we can, but if not, sorry.
It's New York for you.
Hey, I'm walking here.
I'm going to start with a kind of just like an open-ended question. How would you describe yourself as a creative character?
Ooh, okay. So fun-loving, bright, funny, silly. Yeah. All of those. Yeah.
And I feel like that definitely comes across in your work and kind of what people know about you as well. I'd love to kind of get into the origins of kind of your passion for typography and lettering. Do you have any early stories that show this kind of affinity for creativity or design? Or, were you a creative kid? I'd love to hear a story about young Jess, the creative.
Totally. Yeah. So I've always been creative. I've always loved art. I've always loved making things, whether it was painting, making dioramas, making little miniatures, working with clay as a kid, and then, of course, like drawing and then eventually design. But growing up, my mom was and still is an artist. And then eventually she was also a graphic designer pre-Adobe time. So like cutting everything by hand. So I grew up in like a pretty creative household. Both my parents were always very encouraging of my creativity. But also growing up in New York and growing up in Brooklyn, there's graffiti all over the place. And admittedly, some of that graffiti is absolute garbage and it's just ruining the aesthetic. But so much of it makes the aesthetic of New York. There's really cool ways of creating artistic letters and writing things out that I guess maybe if I would have never been around it, I would have never considered it. But one of the first ways that I started playing around with lettering was when I was in middle school and high school, like doodling in my notebook. And I would try to like emulate this graffiti type of work with just a pencil rather than any spray paint.
Yeah, I love that. So it's kind of your environment was a big influence in this kind of idea for, what lettering can be and what graphic design can be.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting you said your mother was a graphic designer pre like these digital products that we use today. What was that like? Do you remember the tactile feeling of designing? Is that something that you were into or into now even?
Yeah. So I don't remember much from when I was younger because it was really from like before I was born. And then once I was born, she was at home with me. But she got into it a little bit later on. And I very, very, very vaguely remember her working on it, but like not enough to have like a full memory to speak on. But myself, I love creating with my hands. I don't get to do it often. But when I do, it always feels so nice. Like just over this past weekend, I decided I was just in a really crafty mood and I did some paper mache stuff and I did some abstract painting. And it was like, wow, I haven't done this in so long. I haven't actually worked with my hands and been able to feel the materials. And I love doing my digital work, but there's just something completely different that affects my soul differently when I'm working with like physical pieces.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And it's almost like the digital products make it so easy to make decisions throughout the design process. But when you're doing something by hand, the decision making becomes that much more important because you can't just like hit Control-Z and go back, right?
It's funny. Like my brain sometimes wants to do Control-Z in real life. I feel like any digital creative that's listening to this right now, sometimes if I'm organizing something in my apartment, let's say I put a box on the left side, I'm like, I really like want it back where it was. In my head, I'll try to Control-Z and I'm like, that is crazy. It's the feeling of realizing that you can't backspace because you're living real life.
Yeah.
It's so weird when you're living also halfway in a digital world.
Yes. Time to touch grass at that point. It's kind of like
exactly. Time to touch grass. 100%. Look at the sky, fresh air, sunshine and grass, please.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like that's why it's important to kind of lean into that a little bit. Something very human about it for sure. But yeah, going back to kind of your background, what was your education around design? Is this something that you studied or is it something that you kind of went back to as an adult?
Yeah, I would say I'm self-taught. Well, okay, I went to like a few semesters of community college and then I was like, this is not for me. And then I left. But I took one design class. And when I say one design class, I don't mean a semester. I mean, I was in that class for one day and I cried, maybe a few days. Yeah. But I did not finish out the semester and I cried every single time. I was so sad because I knew I wanted to be an artist and a designer and be in that world, but I just could not figure out the programs. And it was so frustrating for me. So I essentially gave up on it. And then I had found my way back to just doing my regular art practices. And I was like, you know what, I want to do this for a living. This was years later. And then through that, I was like, well, if I want to make a living, I have to market myself. So if I want to market myself, I have to learn digital marketing. So I took a digital marketing course. And through that, I had to design ads. And I was like, oh, wait, I actually love this. So I found my way, but it was a kind of roundabout way. And then through that, I had taught myself all of the program. When I say taught myself, I mean trial and error just by myself, but also through like YouTube and Skillshare and things like that, tutorials online.
Yeah. And I think that in and of itself takes a lot of discipline, just in terms of figuring out what you need to know to be able to work for yourself in that capacity and then try to seek out the knowledge to make it happen. So
yeah,
kudos to you.
Thank you.
I've been following Women of Type for a while, super familiar with your work. I also love your Instagram. You guys' posts are so funny and the highlight of my day. For listeners that may not be familiar, can you describe Women of Type for us?
Yeah, Women of Type is a community that I started on Instagram that exists to uplift and amplify the work of women and non-binary creatives in the typography and lettering industry. So if you create lettering, if you work with type in any capacity, whether that's design, working with your hands, if it's painting, if it's with clay, if it's type, I want to see it.
Following that, kind of where Women of Type was born out of, this idea of working for yourself and maybe highlighting people that are in a similar space as you. Just how did that kind of like thought process come about?
So Women of Type came out of spite. I had been at the start of my career, or the start of like getting serious about my career, and I wanted to be featured in publications and on Instagram pages. And admittedly, now looking back, my work wasn't there. But at the time, I was like, well, my work is great, and like, why isn't anybody featuring me? And I was so frustrated. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to make my own opportunity. I'm just going to create my own page and I'm going to feature myself. And at the very start, for literally like maybe less than 2 weeks, this was all about me and my ego. But then pretty quickly, I realized this is not about me anymore. This is not about one single person. I don't want to say it blew up overnight, but it blew up pretty quickly. I remember one day texting my friend like, oh my God, I already have 1,000 followers. Oh my God, I have 5,000 followers, 20,000, 50,000. It just kept going. Now we're at 102. Mm-hmm. We're a little stagnant now. So if you guys are listening, definitely follow. But it just became not at all about me anymore. And I think I like it that way, even though it started off with me wanting it to be all about me. So yeah, that's kind of where it came about. And now it's just so much better.
Yeah, I love that. So you kind of created this platform for yourself, right? Because the platform didn't really exist for yourself at that point.
Yeah.
But in the meanwhile, that ended up becoming a platform for a lot of people like you that are maybe in a similar spot or have similar experiences when trying to get featured in different places in the type world, which can be very close-knit, sometimes maybe feel a little bit small. When you were first starting out, you mentioned it kind of blew up overnight. What was that experience like, or where did that come from?
It was like a little scary.
Yeah.
I guess in my head when I started it, I wanted it to be this big thing. I think when anybody starts anything, you have like these big dreams of it. But like then when it actually starts to happen, you're like, oh my God, what? Wait, no, I actually don't know what I'm doing. Oh my God, backwards. So yeah, it was a little bit scary. Sometimes it still is a little bit scary. I feel like at the same time, I'm like, okay, I have like this pretty large responsibility to a community, but I'm also like, okay, everyone calm down. And by everyone, I mean me. I'm talking to myself. I'm like, calm down. You're one person. You can't do everything and you can't make everybody happy. Like people are going to like things and not like things. And you just have to do what feels right for you. Mm-hmm. People think that Women of Type is like this large corporation with a ton of employees. And when people email me or message me, they'll be like, hey, can you like pass this along to the right person on your team? I'm like, right here, babe. It's just me. Yeah. It's me and a social media manager that I hired to like help me out with some of the baseline content.
There's this presence that you've built and this huge community that you've built that feels so much bigger than maybe it may actually be behind the scenes. And that's really admirable. How do you go about finding people to feature?
So at the beginning, I was kind of just scrolling a lot, looking at different hashtags, looking for women and non-binary creatives that I like their work. Now people are tagging Women of Type, people are using hashtags, people are DMing me, sending me their work. So it's a lot easier for me to find the work, or rather the work finds me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a dedicated email address for people to send in, which admittedly people don't use often. So it's a lot easier for your work to get seen that way. It's significantly less saturated.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's found now.
What kinds of things do you look for when you're kind of, looking at people's work and you're getting tagged in a lot of things?
So I try very hard not to base it off of my personal preferences, because I am not the end-all be-all judge of what's good and what isn't. Like, art is subjective, and that being said, I'm only human. And sometimes I see something and I love it. I'm like, oh my God, I have to share this. And it's a mix between just the art and just the message. And then there's like that perfect mixture in between where it's beautiful art with a beautiful message. And that's an absolute banger. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, let's share that. But sometimes there's beautiful art and like the message literally just says, hey, hi, whatever. But like just the way that it's created is gorgeous. And then sometimes there's a really wonderful quote that's just written out. And I'm like, well, that's just a beautiful sentiment and I want to share that.
So you're kind of like both the creator and the curator at that point to kind of put your own taste behind and kind of just appreciate what it is that you're looking at for what it is and how it's created and maybe the process behind it. Super hard to do. I also know that Women of Type has grown a lot over time. You guys, or you, published a book. It's hard to kind of, realize that it is a one-person team.
Yeah, no, I get it.
You've published a book recently. You have different programs to support people in the space and help them out or sponsor them in different ways. How have these opportunities come about?
So with the book, people were kind of asking me to do it. It was something that I had in my mind and people were telling me, like in real life and online, they're like, hey, you should do this. You should do this book. You should do a book. And I'm like, I don't think I have a choice. I think I have to do it.
Yeah.
So that's how that came about. And I remember I announced that I was going to do the book in August. And then by January, it was already published. So it was a quick turnaround in terms of that happening. And it was like me taking submissions, then reviewing the submissions, and then also getting the signatures from all the artists. Like, yes, you have permission to use my work, because I'm not just going to take somebody's work and then put it in a book and say, hey guys, look, this exists now. So that was a big learning curve for sure, because I had never published a book before. But I feel like it was learning by being thrown into the fire in the best way. Because now, if/when I ever do publish another book, I feel pretty confident. It'll still be a lot of work, but it won't be nearly as scary.
For our listeners that don't know what it is, talk about the book a little bit. Can you give a little bit of background?
Yeah. So it's called Women of Type. It's the Women of Type book. And it's a curation of the work from women and non-binary creatives in the typography and lettering space all over the world. It's a really beautiful collection of work. Yeah. And it's available on Amazon. And you can get it in hardcover or softcover. And if you do get it, please write a positive review, because I am positive that you will enjoy it.
I love it. You have some programs around just like supporting people in the space. How did you kind of figure out a need for that? And yeah, what was the experience like just in terms of building those up?
So I had the Artist in Residence program. I would still love to bring that back at some point. And I was just thinking about like what I would have liked and what I did need at the beginning of my career. And that's really like who it's geared towards. I don't need to give a grant or a residency to somebody who already has all of the accolades and all of the clients and all of the work and is already getting paid. Like, I want to be able to give that to somebody who is at the start of their career, but shows like that they're really putting in the work and looking to learn and looking to experiment. And it just gives somebody the space to be like, okay, here's some money to go create work. You don't have to create the work that maybe you're necessarily known for. It just needs to be type or lettering, but like, feel free to experiment, go crazy, do whatever you want. Go ahead. This is for you. That's really what it is.
Yeah. And I love that. Like you said, it's easier for people that maybe have, I don't know, a certain presence already to get opportunities like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's more important than ever to kind of open them up to members of the community that maybe just haven't had the same kind of opportunities.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about different ways that Women of Type has grown, different opportunities that you've created for the community, and that you've grown as a creative. Can you pinpoint one moment when you got an opportunity you have been waiting for, or you had this moment of like, oh my gosh, I made it?
Yeah. So I'll start with Women of Type. When the community started to grow, that felt like an I made it moment. But let's be real, like numbers on Instagram don't mean anything. Like they do and they don't, you know? But once I announced that the book was going to be a thing and people started applying, that's when I was like, holy shit, because I got nearly 400 submissions and they came like pretty quickly. When the book finally released, it ended up being like the number one in its category on Amazon for quite a while.
Wow.
I think it was there for maybe like at least a couple of weeks. And then I had a launch party. And at that launch party, it was packed. Like I hosted it at the Shopify headquarters here in New York. And they had an Eminem, like the rapper, Marshall Mathers, pop up the week before. And they were like, you had more people than Eminem.
You're joking.
I know.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh, excuse me, Mom Spaghetti. So
My name is...
that was like, oh, this is crazy. What? So that was definitely a moment for me. And then outside of Women of Type and just myself, the first really big opportunity that I got was illustrating a campaign for Stella Artois beer. It was a 10 illustration campaign for different cities in the US, and I couldn't believe that I got the job. Looking back now, should have gotten paid double or triple that. But I was also just so in the start of my career, and I was just so excited to be working with like any sort of known name. Was like, I was delirious about it. I was so happy. And that really just raised the bar for me where I'm like, okay, what's next? Let's go. Let's keep going.
I love that. So yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Women of Type, but I want to explore a little bit of your personal, professional career trajectory too. Would you say that the work you've done with Women of Type has given you some of these opportunities? For example, what you just described with Stella Artois.
So no, actually, the thing with Stella Artois came well before Women of Type.
Okay.
I would say when it comes to sponsorship opportunities, that has definitely given me an edge, because when you're working with brands that want to show their product and their things to an audience, that's when the numbers matter in certain ways. But then when it comes to a certain skill set and a certain aesthetic and illustration, lettering, or type style, I feel very strongly that maybe there's a few jobs that I got found through or because I have that association of me running Women of Type. But I would like to think that my skill set has gotten me to where I am in terms of those jobs and those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. What is kind of like one piece of advice you give to someone listening that's in a similar situation where you were pre-Women of Type, trying to put yourself out there and get these kinds of opportunities?
I think you have to be annoying. You have to just keep reminding people that you're there. And sometimes you'll email somebody and they won't answer. And it's not because they don't want to work. Maybe they don't want to work with you, but you don't know. You have to keep emailing them. It depends on how badly I want to work with somebody. But like, I'll hit them up 4 times, be like, hey, just following up. And there are so many times that after the 3rd or 4th email, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was so busy. Like, you just got me at the wrong times, but thank you for following up. And then I ended up working with them. Or it was like, I don't think we're a good fit for this, but I can put you in touch with X, Y, and Z. Or now is not a good time, but I would love to work with you for a future project. And then I eventually end up working with them. There are times where I've gotten in touch with people and I just got on their radar. And I didn't work with them for such a long time. And then maybe like a couple years down the line, they were like, hey, by the way, I remember that this is something that you do. Are you still interested in working with us? So like, you really have to be annoying and you have to keep reminding people that you're there and you have to be your own number one advocate. You can have friends and family that are like, wow, you're so talented. We really believe in you. But like, if you're sitting there berating yourself and being like, I'm not that good, people are going to be like, okay, you're not that good. People will believe you if you tell them that you're not good. And if you tell people that you're amazing and then you act on that and you prove that to them and to yourself every day, it's not just, oh, they'll believe you because you're saying it. You're doing it. You're embodying that talent and what you want to be.
So it's kind of like standing behind yourself a little bit. And I agree. I feel like being annoying is underrated. And it's so important, especially when you're working for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I ended up working with Monotype. I was annoying. I saw you guys at Adobe Max. I chatted with somebody day one. I came back and chatted with someone day two. I made sure to email multiple times because I think when I emailed you guys initially, things were busy and it was no one's fault. It just is what it is. Happens to me too. My first intern that I ever hired, the first 2 times that she emailed me, I didn't even have the headspace to consider working with another person. I was so busy. I was so overwhelmed. And then finally she emailed me again. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I actually do need the help.
Yes, 100%. Or sometimes you see something, you file it away in the back of your mind, but then you need that extra reminder.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, what trips people up, including myself, is like thinking, oh, they must have not responded because they just don't want to work with me. Less so like, I just need to remind them because people forget. People are people. Everyone's busy.
Yeah.
It's worth a shot.
100%.
Being a social media manager, I'd love to kind of discuss how social media and online platforms have influenced the success of this community. But also I know that there's a push and pull with social media when it comes to artists because these are rented platforms.
Totally.
And algorithms that you have no control over. So what's that kind of been like just in terms of using this platform to kind of grow Women of Type?
Frustrating in ways. I like the way that you put it. We're renting this platform. Mm-hmm. We don't have ownership over the platform. I mean, I have ownership over my email list, but my email list is not nearly as large as the number of people following me on Instagram. But yes, it's frustrating, but I have met so many wonderful people and have made so many incredible friends in real life that now, even if I don't live near them, I talk to them in real life. I talk to them on the phone, we FaceTime, we'll do like video chats or just texting all the time. And like, that's really sweet.
Yeah, it's interesting because it almost feels like there's a shortage of ways to build the same level of community or interaction outside of these platforms that you have no control over. But to make it something valuable and maybe a little bit long lasting, you have to find ways to extend past it.
Yeah, I agree. Like we said before, you got to touch grass, you know?
Yes.
And when I say touch grass, that encompasses leaving your desk and talking to people in real life too. Mm-hmm. I think during COVID, obviously, everything changed and we got very used to not having that face-to-face interaction. We just had like the 5-year mark of when COVID started, but we haven't fully come back to, hey, like, instead of meeting up for coffee or pizza or a drink, let's just FaceTime.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's super helpful. One of my best friends lives in Miami, so like I can't just meet up with her whenever I want. Not to be all pessimistic, but we live in a different world now and maybe we'll never get back to that. But if you can make the effort to like hang out with people IRL and not in screen. I don't think that's a real acronym. You'll feel good. It's nice to be around other people sometimes.
I agree with you. I feel like asking someone for a coffee chat or something like that was so much more normal pre-2020, whereas now it's more about, hey, you got 15 minutes for a quick Zoom chat, which is great. It's more convenient, but you do kind of lose a little bit of that interpersonal conversation.
I will say I absolutely do not miss, as a freelancer, having to like go to other studios. Like I would have to physically be in studio.
Yes.
I hated it. Most of the time you couldn't use your own laptop because of like NDA reasons. So like it was like wearing somebody else's shoes. That's what it felt like. So in terms of that, I'm like, oh, thank God I never have to go back to that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, being around other people. If you guys want to come hang out at my studio, that's fine. Yeah. I don't want to go work at anyone else's.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can totally understand that. So having used social media a lot through Women of Type, what advice would you give to other artists when it comes to using social media to build a platform for themselves?
I don't feel like I'm actually that well equipped to answer this. I will give the best answer that I can.
Yeah.
And it's just to stay consistent, which is not groundbreaking information. You guys have heard this before. Try not to really look at the numbers and think of your Instagram accounts or your social media accounts as just an extension of your portfolio and another place where people can find you. If you get caught up in the numbers, you're going to start to feel bad about yourself. I'm guilty of it. It's really not about that. It's about I guess from a business perspective, you're putting it out there so that somebody can find it and hire you. And I think this might be like the second or third time this week that I'm quoting that Lady Gaga quote. There's 100 people in a room and if one person believes in you, but it's like, yeah, if you post something and only 5 people like it, and out of those 5 people, one of them's an art director for a brand that you really want to work with, you're good to go. They'll hire you if they want to based on the work that they see that you put out there. So just keep sharing your stuff.
Yeah. Being consistent, very, very important.
Yeah.
Any other kind of advice for maybe women or non-binary people that are early on in their careers that are wanting to make a career out of this and maybe want to work for themselves eventually?
Okay, so non-male specific individuals that are trying to make a career for yourself, and I feel like this goes across the board. Historically, if we look back, a lot of people have been praised for work that is not necessarily amazing. They were just the ones to put it out there. Mm-hmm. They were the only ones that put it out there because they were the only ones that were confident enough to put it out there. So I'm not going to say you don't need to be good. You do. You need to be good and you need to practice and you need to work on your skill and your craft and you need to work your ass off every single day to get there. But there are a lot of people who aren't actually that good that are just very confident and put the work out there. And so they get the accolades and they get the praise. And you need to find a way to be able to get yourself there.
Yes, 100%. And I was going to say, I need that sound clip cut out and put as like my alarm in the morning. I love that so much.
Go for it.
Yes, I totally agree. In that same vein, as you were first starting out, or even now, do you have any role models, idols, people that you look up to that kind of have helped you along your journey to where you are now?
So I always say my mom, and it's true. My mom has been like so supportive of my creative journey and me just being a creative, and like gave me like a really inflated sense of ego and delusion, but in a good way, because I think you need a little bit of delusion to be at a certain level of success. And I'm not quite there yet, but for the plans that I have for myself, but for where I want to be. So yeah, my mom.
I love that.
Yeah. And myself.
And yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. So you just mentioned some plans that you might have or things that you might want to accomplish. Can you share what those are or kind of what's next for you?
I mean, nothing's concrete. These are just big ideas that I have. I would love if Women of Type grew into like a lifestyle brand that was based off of creativity. I don't know what that would look like, but if there's someone out there that kind of wants to give me a chunk of money to make that happen, let's do it. Mm-hmm. I would love to do more in-person events. Like we were just saying, having face-to-face interaction with people would be so cool. And I want to bring back the Artist in Residence program. So yeah, those are all things Women of Type wise that I just want to keep moving forward with.
Yeah. And what about for yourself? I know it's kind of, similar, but is there anything different?
They're intertwined in ways.
Yeah.
One of the goals that I have for myself is to give more in-person talks. A lot of the talks that I have given have been more like Q&A based or me on a panel, which is great. And I love doing them, but I do want to get more comfortable doing TED Talk type of talks where I'm just speaking to the audience directly. So again, anyone out there listening that needs people to speak, I'm available. Hit me up.
We'll manifest it.
Let's go.
What kinds of things would you want to talk about? What are you passionate about? What do you want people to know?
Yeah. The obvious answer of like, okay, cool, I can do a workshop based on some of the skills that I'm really good at, but I like talking about mindset. I like talking about creativity. And you and I have discussed this quite a bit, your creativity via your inner child and allowing yourself to be creative and not putting the pressure on yourself to make this amazing, incredible thing and just let your intuition kind of take over to do the work for you. So I'd like to talk about that. And I have in the past. I just want to do a little bit more of it.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of in that same vein, almost design or creativity, this might sound cliche, but almost going beyond a profession and more about how you live your
absolutely.
life, right?
Yeah. When you're an artist and when you're a creative person, whether that's visually artistic or otherwise, it's such a huge part of who you are as a human being. I think that there are people that are in the design space and that's their job. And then there are also people that are in the design space and like, that's who they are. And I'm not even going to say like one is better than the other. It's just a distinction for people, an inner distinction, I would say. For me, it's part of who I am. Visual creativity is just like, I can't imagine my life without it. It's just such a huge part of me.
Yeah. So when you say that, are there any examples of kind of how you live your day-to-day life or how you interpret certain things that you think are more, like you said, maybe it's a certain curiosity or just a way of thinking? Do you have any examples for how that works?
Environment-wise, my apartment is filled with art and filled with color. I mean, right behind me, I can't really show you because I have a bunch of wires, but I have a massive gallery wall. My studio is covered in art and things that I like. I love nostalgia, not just from my childhood, but maybe even just things that I've familiar with from other eras. There's something about that feels, physically seeing it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, because I want to try to visualize it for people listening. When you say nostalgia, some things that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, what are those things?
Oh, okay. So I love vintage toys. My husband and I, we go to vintage shops and antique shops quite often. And we have a very curated collection of vintage aluminum toys that are painted. You know what, actually, a really good example of this? Think I Spy books.
Oh, yeah.
Everything in those I Spy books, that is
yes.
That inspires me to the nth degree. I love it. So stuff like that, textures in signs and paintings and lettering, like the old textures. There's this one coffee shop a few blocks from where I live, and the signage is so old that the paint has crinkled into itself and given itself these veins. And I hope they never change it, because the older it gets, the cooler it looks.
I love that. There's a certain charm to something like that. I rant about this a lot to the people around me, but I almost feel like there used to be more of a craft around these things, like signage and architecture and just things out in the world. People used to hire actual craftsmen to make things like this. And I never want that to go away. I almost never want things to modernize beyond that point, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, it feels nice to look at. That a human touched it, a human made it. Mm-hmm. There's history behind it.
We talked about what's next for you. Where can people listening go to follow your work, and how can the everyday person listening to this support Women of Type?
Yeah, so you can follow Women of Type on Instagram at Women of Type. You can subscribe to the newsletter, which is linked in the bio over there and somewhere on the website. And if you are an artist and you want to be featured, there's a pinned post on how you can get considered for being featured on the page. In terms of myself, you can follow me on Instagram at Chick of All Trade. And same deal. I don't have a newsletter for myself, but chickofalltrade.com, Chick of All Trade, et cetera, all that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on Creative Characters. This was so lovely.
I'm so happy that we got to do this. Thank you.
You can check out Jess's work on Instagram at Chick of All Trade. And you can see what Women of Type is up to at Women of Type.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you like our show, please subscribe, rate us, and share us with a friend. Creative Characters is brought to you by Monotype. It's produced by Christopher Olin and Mia Sullivan. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll see you then.